Rousseau, and when I was 19, which was 56 years ago, I was working for a forestry company in northern Quebec, way up in the north, in part of Quebec towards the Labrador border. And we were doing tree measurement. There was a crew of 4 of us, and we flew into a lake called Kakayu Lake. And Kakayu in Cree is some kind of mystical animal, beast, whatever. And I was told this by one of the Cree people that were working in the logging camp. And he said that most people don't go near that lake because it has some kind of mysterious creature. And we didn't pay attention, of course. But we got into that lake, and it was odd to begin with. It's a great big hole in the ground with about 300-foot walls all the way around. And so when we flew in with the float plane with the canoes, 2 canoes, 1 on each side, and equipment for food for 5 days, tents, everything we needed, we decided to camp on the island that was near shore. That way we didn't have to worry about much. So we landed on the lake and got to shore, unloaded everything, float plane took off. We tried to set up radio reception, but it didn't work, so we finally ended up climbing a spruce tree on the island, set up the antenna, and it just barely was able to get out of that hole. So like everywhere in northern Quebec, we started fishing, and there was no fish, none whatsoever, which was odd because every lake we were at before had pickerel walleye or jack or trout or something, but there was nothing, absolutely no fish whatsoever. So we thought that was odd. Next day we headed out for work, teams of 2 with canoes, and the first guys went down the river to a spot where they had to work, and we went up the lake to a spot where we had to work and crawled up over the top. The odd thing was there was nothing alive that we could hear, very few birds in by the lake. As soon as we got to the top of the ridge, then we could hear all kinds of animals, squirrels, birds, everything. So we did our work, came back, 2 days like that, no big deal. On the 3rd day, the guys were going down river again, and they were running a rapid and flipped. And they lost the canoe and all the equipment, and that's never happened in the 2 years that we worked there before. So that was odd again. So anyway, they came back. We brought them over from the shoreline back to the island. We did search for the canoe. We never found it, and we never found any equipment. So we contacted them and said that we were down a canoe and down a set of equipment. And they finally responded after about 25 tries and said, yeah, they got that information. So the next, we did the next day, we just took turns with the canoe, got our work done. And on the 4th night, we were sitting around the campfire just at dusk. And there was 2 of us on one side of the fire, 2 on the other. And just at dusk, when the sun was still up a bit, but starting to go down and the light was fading a bit, we were looking at the other side of the lake, which was about 400 yards away. And all of a sudden, we all heard something, rocks falling. And there was an open area on the other side of the lake. It was kind of a scree slope with all loose rocks that had fallen down that angle, but bush on each side, and that rock wall went up to the edge and then over and gone. When I looked up, I could see this dark-colored thing. It was scrambling up the rocks, and it only went up about 10 feet through the rocks, and that's what we had heard before it stopped and turned and looked at us. My buddy beside me said, "What is that?" And both of us saw it, and when we said that, it stopped and turned its head and looked at us for probably 3-4 seconds. We could make out the general outline. And what was funny was the eyes were very, very pale. Even at 400 yards, you could see that. And then it scrambled up over the hill and gone before the other two guys turned around. When they did, if they saw anything, it was the butt end going over the ridge. So we never heard anything after that, but all of us were a little worried about what was happening. I mean, we had the equipment we needed to protect ourselves, but nobody slept much that night. And first thing at dawn in the morning, when the plane was supposed to come in at 8:30, we were already up by 6:30, had everything packed on shore of the island, and we built a loading platform out in the lake by cutting trees so that the plane, we could load immediately when the plane got there. Plane got there about 8:15 in the morning. We had everything packed, and we had that plane packed and the canoe, the remaining canoe, hooked to the floats by, I bet you, 8:45, and we were out of there. And the pilot was shocked that we were that fast, but we wanted to get out of there. So this is what it looked like, my rendition after 56 years, and it's kind of burned in my mind. But when I got back to the logging camp, the main camp, a couple of weeks later, I talked to the same guy, the Cree guy, and said, I seen what you told me about. And he said, I doubt it. He said, you're a white man, you probably didn't see it. And I said, well, the other guy with me is Métis, and he saw it, and I saw the same thing. And I described it to him, and he said, that's exactly what it is. But the interesting thing is, in most places, trap lines are marked by trees that are cut off at 4 or 5 feet, squared, painted, and a number for a registered trap line is usually on those posts. At the end of lakes, at portages, all through that area. In that whole place, we never saw a single sign of anybody being in there, either trapping or traveling through or anything. There was not a sign of human anything. And when I asked Moses about that, he said, no, nobody goes in there because that creature lives in that hole that you're in. I said, well, whatever it was, we saw it. And the name of the lake is Kakayu Lake, and that's where we were.
That is amazing. And you say it's still burned in your mind, all the same details.
Yeah, everything.
Do you have any reaction when you think of it or when you're speaking of it now? Like some people, after meeting certain animals, they have an emotional reaction every time.
Put it this way, if somebody offered me $1 million to camp in there again, I wouldn't take it. I won't go back there.
So it took its emotional toll on you somewhat or not to any great extent?
The work I've done all my life is a lot of emotional stuff, and I'm able to block all that out. So, other than when I look at it or think about it, it bothers me a little bit, but not. It doesn't bother me all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. So, could you kind of classify it as a pleasant experience, or like I interviewed or I talked to one young man who had a very close encounter with a huge Sasquatch, and he kept insisting that he wished he had never seen it.
Oh, no, that doesn't bother me.
So you're kind of glad that you had this experience?
Well, yeah, because I'm a biologist and I can't explain it.
Yeah. Right.
So that adds to the
intrigue,
the lore, or the intrigue of what's out there that you don't know.
Yeah.
So, this is something I can't explain, never have been able to, and probably never will.
Well, that's remarkable that before you even went to that spot, that somebody warned you about what was there.
Yeah, and I think that may have worked on all of our brains. the four of us that were there, because everything was going wrong. And we'd been doing this for 2 years with nothing ever going wrong.
Really?
You know, and so everything goes wrong there, and there was no fish. It's a
And-
nice big lake with a river running into it. There's no fish whatsoever. We fished every day for 4 days. Never got a bite. And normally in those lakes in the north, you just cast your line out and there's 5 different walleye chasing it,
Yeah.
or a pike or something.
Okay.
But nothing here. Absolutely nothing.
And down near the lake, there was hardly any birds. as
Just
well?
ravens.
Just ravens.
Yeah, that was it.
Mm.
But as soon as you got to the top, you heard squirrels and all kinds of different songbirds and stuff like that, but nothing down there. Mosquitoes and ravens, blackflies. That's it.
So, when you first got there, did you kind of have a bit of an eerie feeling, from what you had been told, or not really?
I might have had,
Had you been there before?
no,
This was
No.
your first time in that
first
spot.
time in that spot,
Okay.
in that lake.
Had anyone else ever been sent there to do what you were to do?
I don't think so, because I think we put all new plots in, measurement plots,
Okay.
instead of going back in and remeasuring previous plots that were put in there 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
Okay.
So these were all new ones, I think.
So, did you ever in the following years find anyone or hear of anyone that had seen anything close to this?
No. No, the only thing is, probably 10 years after, 15, no, even more than that, 30 years ago, I was on the computer one day and looked up something with Wolfman or something, and there was a picture in there that was exactly what I saw.
Really?
Yeah, just the head, but it was
just the head.
It was somebody had drawn it, and it was exactly perfect. But I can't find it again now. So
Yeah.
I've tried many times since.
So was that something that someone had seen and then made a
I
drawing
guess
of
so.
it?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. So you may not be the only one to have seen such
Oh
a thing.
no, and I'm sure the First Nations people that lived there, the Cree in that area,
Yeah.
would have known way more about this than I
Yeah.
do. So,
But to you, there's no doubt that this was a real flesh and blood creature.
I don't know how much blood or flesh there was, but it was perfectly real for the two of us that saw it.
And it moved very quickly after it saw you.
Well, after it stopped, looked at us, the hair was all up on the back of the neck, but I mean, there was no teeth showing or nothing like that.
Yeah.
And at 400 yards, that would be hard to see to begin with.
Yeah.
But after it turned and looked, it probably stared at us for 3, 4, 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned and scrambled up that ridge just like a bullet and over the top.
Wow.
So,
And so you're thinking that it's 300 to 400 pounds or close to that.
yeah, it'd be around that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, based on what I know now about bears. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the English name for that, the closest that you've ever heard, is like a wolf man.
yeah, something like that,
Yeah.
I mean, you can say werewolf if you want or whatever
Yeah,
you want,
yeah.
but it's, like, to me, it's always been a Kakayu. And
Kakayu.
I learned that from the northern people when I lived
And
up
that's
there.
in the Cree.
Yeah, it's in Cree.
Cree. So that Cree gentleman that you knew of,
Yeah.
you got to talk to him before and after.
Yep.
And so he wasn't surprised that you saw it.
No, he was surprised that I saw it because he figures that I was too white to see it. In other
Exactly.
words, I wasn't First
Exactly.
Nations.
Yeah, right.
So,
So do you feel that maybe he had more of an idea of a more spiritual type of creature than straight flesh and blood and physical?
could have, yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the stories that go with First Nations people have some basis in reality.
Yeah.
And, it told and retold and retold. So,
Mhm.
what is exaggerated a little bit or what is a little bit taken off, you don't know.
Yeah.
So the story I heard is what Moses he told me, and that was it.
So you had been warned.
Yeah. Yeah, but I didn't pay any attention because you're 19 and you're afraid
Yeah.
of nothing. So
Well, when you saw it, I know you were ready to leave that place in a hurry, but do you remember thinking back and recalling what this gentleman told you?
oh yeah, oh yeah, like instantaneously.
Yeah.
After that thing went over the edge, I thought, whoa, that's exactly what he told me it would look like.
Yeah.
So,
So you were really privileged to lay eyes on something.
yeah, something
know.
that I can't explain, and that's good.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Well, I'm just so delighted to have met you, years ago, and and realized that you were when you made a sketch for me, which went into my book about unusual creatures. Then I didn't realize you were a sculptor as well at that time, but I remember asking you a few years ago if you might by any chance be able to sculpt, and so you did just a remarkable job with just plain styrofoam like this. But yeah, this is just awesome, to have the kind of a replica like this, physical manifestation of what you saw. This is just so special, and I hope you enjoy whatever comes of this exposure, and you're a special person to have had this experience, and yeah, so I hope this will can bring you pleasure throughout the years, whatever happens to this story.
yep.
And thank you, thank you so much for letting me, do this and get to have you explain everything, and for doing the sculpture. This is really special. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.